Okay, how do you discern when it's time to dig into existing Christian culture and plod versus time to pioneer? Well, this is really just about God's leading, because like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't thinking of myself as a pioneer woman. Here we go. We're just doing the next thing. So we were establishing a Christian culture in our home. That's where it starts. We were exporting that to the schools as God blessed us with that opportunity with the schools. So you just start with your home and do what God leads you to do, and hopefully it will spread. I don't think there is a sign, but as God gives you opportunities, pray and take the ones that seem like a good idea. Here, this one's for Bekah. I'm going to set it here for you in a minute. How do I submit to my husband when he doesn't support me in beautifying our home? Well, here's the thing. I'll swap with you. There's for Bekah. Thank you. I don't know what you mean by beautifying, but I just feel that you need to follow your husband. I really do. And we may think beautifying it is he's going to adore the way we do it, when in fact he's not keen on that. I always wanted our home to look like a man does live here. Not to have like Western cowboy decor, but that isn't who my husband is anyway. But I didn't want it to look like a girl's place. This is a home where a man lives, and so it's a balance. So I'd say pray about that new couch, but maybe if he's not keen on the big pink flowers, find something that's more you both agree on. I hope that helps. So you want to, I guess, pray and don't go to war over this. Trust the Lord and do what you can. When we first got married, literally, I covered, you're going to laugh, I hope, or not cry, but we needed some furniture, so I remember covering some cardboard boxes with some fabric as for a side table. I did that. It worked. But thankfully, I didn't hang on to that. I moved on. Doug even built us a dining room table out of 4x4s. A very manly table that you couldn't move. What are practical ways to encourage your husband to strive for bigger goals and dreams and not be a discouragement when he brings those things up? How can wives be a help instead of a hindrance? Well, it sounds like on this one, you want to encourage him to strive for bigger goals, but then you don't want to be a discouragement when he has them. So I would just say, yes, there is a balance. And I just think you need to be on board as far as it is possible with you and not be a wet blanket on every idea. And just think about it. Don't necessarily ask him that question. Ask the Lord, am I an encouragement when my husband gets a great idea? Or am I the cautious wet blanket? So, when do you decide between needing to have faith or just needing to take action? Well, so you look for your opportunities. So sometimes you have to take action. So the little dinner story I told you, well, I was taking action. I was getting ready to crack the eggs and make scrambled eggs and toast or whatever. And God intervened and provided another way. So you want to do both. If you're taking action, do it by faith. Lord, I'm trusting you that this is what you want me to do. Please stop me if it isn't. I don't want to get out of your plan or purpose. Then, as a single woman, is it important to look for a trailblazer? Someone who's more of one than I am? Or should I marry a man who's more cautious than I am? Oh, dear. What are your opportunities here? Do you have a trailblazer that you're turning down and a cautious man that you're more interested in? I can't quite answer this, You want to go into marriage with someone you look up to and trust and admire. And I remember when we got married, Doug was a freshman. He was on the GI Bill. I was a graduate. I remember asking him, so what do you want to do? He said, change the world. It's like, okay, I'm good with that. He didn't know yet either. But we had an idea that we were going to move away from Moscow. We did. We thought, well, once we get the kids grown, we'll move back to maybe Annapolis, where he grew up, where he could do things. But it turned out he could do things here and write books here and change the world right from here. So I would just say, this is the kind of conversation to have with God. It's like, just, Lord, lead me and protect me. Then there's one quick question on the back. What did the courtship process look like for you and Doug? Can I answer that quickly? Well, I had come straight out of the dating culture. Never, the first thing I realized as a new Christian is I'm not going to date unbelievers. Check. Then I decided I'm not going to date anybody that I don't think I might possibly want to marry. That eliminated a whole bunch of people immediately. And then I just learned how to say no thanks, no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. So then Doug comes into the picture. He had also decided not to be in the dating scene. So we were working together at Crossroads Bookstore when he got out of the Navy. So the whole month of August, I was the manager. We were redecorating, of course. First thing I wanted to do, we need to revamp this place. And so we were painting in the evenings, and we would often end up side by side painting, And one night, a young man did come in and ask me out to come see his slides, come to his apartment for dinner and see his slides of his trip. And Doug was standing right there, watching this process, and I said, oh, no thanks. Very sweet. Oh, come on. I said, no thanks. Feeling really awkward. And then he asked again. It's like, really, no thanks. And so Doug realized he needed to get on the stick, but I turned to him after this man left and I said, was I so rude to him? And he said, are you kidding? You should have said, do you know what no means? And then he felt a little like, oh, I'm giving her advice and I have vested interest. So he thought he should tell me he was interested. So now don't be shocked by this story, but given how we were living then, it shouldn't shock you. He asked me to meet him to go for a walk. So we went for a walk. He told me he was interested. And I thought, well, I like the sound of that. That's good. I'm good with that. So that was our walk. We probably talked about other things. That's all I remember. We agreed not to date because the Christian community then, though much smaller, was just like it is now. And we didn't want to create a hubbub. So we were going to keep it on the DL. And because we worked together every day, no reason to also date. So the next week, he asked me for a second walk. I think it was a week later, in which he proposed. I knew, see? He's a man of action, I tell you. Well, I was surprised. I was not expecting that. And so I knew my right response would be to say, I'll pray about it, because I hadn't had time to think about it. I hadn't been hoping we'd get around to that. So I told him I would pray about it, and I did for 3 days, but I kept looking for a verse. This is the man. Or the answer is, So the thing the Lord showed me in those 3 days is this is by faith. Trust me. And do you respect this man? I knew that was in the Bible. Absolutely. Do you think you could submit to him? Yep. Trust him more than anybody. Just I saw it. And so we didn't court and we didn't date. We did nothing. We got married. But I did tell him the next day at work, it's like, well, I'd like to talk to you later. It was very unromantic. It was like a business deal. And the store cleared out, and there we were. And I was like, oh, dear. I was so nervous. So I said, well, I decided yes. And he was like, great. It was precious. I mean, really, when you think of it, we didn't know what we were doing. However, I think we had one date before I said yes, after he proposed, and then he took me out that night. I remember we went to a movie where I was thinking, is he going to hold my hand or not? I mean, sweaty, and we're engaged. We didn't have a ring or anything, but God blessed it very much, and I couldn't be more grateful. So that's our courtship story.
Okay, so there's some similar ones that I'll just try to lump together. This one, I tend to want to hide my beauty because I don't want to cause any man to stumble. Am I just too prideful in that? What advice would you give? Yeah, potentially, I would think. But I think the other problem is I think that is buying into the assumption that there's only one way beauty can go, and that is to be sexually available. Like if that's your only concept of beauty, I think you have more of a problem right there that you need to get over. Because that is having bought the central lie that you're only beautiful if you are communicating sleazy. The next one, I suppose, is a bit similar. My husband has had a problem with porn, so I react to beauty in a negative light. Advice. Again, that seems to assume that you think there's only one kind of beauty, and that is like immoral. And the other problem with that, I would say, is like, well, goodness sakes, I mean, if he's drawn to a counterfeit of something, like a caricatured counterfeit, why would you then react by pulling away the real thing? That's, hardly gonna help the situation. Let's see, there's a bunch wanting, resources that flesh this out. Here you all are. This is the resource. I really think we're not living in a moment where it hasn't been scripted. Somebody hasn't walked through this, and it needs a lot of Christian women on the job right now, thinking about it, putting it together, being innovative, coming up with something. I do think there are a lot of resources in terms of, things like architecture, for instance. There's a book called The Old Way of Seeing, which is just a really good, walking through how people used to build and what it meant versus this sort of brutalist architecture now or whatever, just learning to see things. And so, you could look at the past, there's things you could read up on, but as far as I know, there is no handbook for here is what Christian women ought to do when it comes to fleshing out our faith in, beautiful ways. I don't think that exists. So get out there and do it and become the footnote that other people can reference back to. I do think that, like with Mom's talk, I think God blesses obedience. I think just start and see what happens. I don't think we know what it's going to look like. And I do think that it would be great if people looked at Christian homes, Christian women, Christian culture, and thought, what is this? What is it really? I don't understand. I haven't encountered this. This is new. And so I don't think that, if that book has been written, I haven't read it. So I think this is more of what kind of, resources. How do you start small with cultivating beauty? I don't know. I guess I would say start small. Just look for places in your own life. We all are in such different situations. We have such different sets of circumstances that I would just think, where did God put you? Where did he plant you? And just look around in your immediate vicinity. What can you do to make it lovely? And maybe that's, making your children look like somebody took the time to brush their hair. Or maybe it's you deciding that actually maybe not sweatpants every day. Or, I don't know, whatever it is, how can you see what God has given you and then turn a profit on it, and have it not be, obviously there are all of the qualifiers. There's those verses for a reason about charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. There are pitfalls there, but I think we can sometimes we can take those pitfalls as an excuse to not try anything at all. And so I think the beauty should always be pointing to something else, to the beauty of holiness, to Christ, to Zion, to the temple, like all the things that the Bible describes as beautiful. I think it should be pointing there. If the whole point of it is just all to come to me, and then everyone will think I'm so amazing, everyone will like my Instagram post, everyone will think that it's so awesome, that shows that you're totally off in the bushes. That's not where it should be. It should always be like a road sign pointing through you to something else. And that's, I think, then how do you express that in the details? How should Christians think about weight loss? Oh, gracious sakes. I don't know. As you can see, I'm nailing it. It's a perennial question, isn't it? But I do think there's always the ditches on both sides of the road. I feel like the obsession with fitness and the obsession with, your persona as a fit person or whatever, it's so idolatrous. Like our whole culture has made such an idol of that. And I think there are a lot of Christians who have bought into that in a really damaging way. And they basically, that's the altar that they are sacrificing at, is me and my fitness levels. On the other hand, then you have, the ditch on the other side of the road, which is feeling like, who cares about anything anyway? And so, again, I feel like that's a place where it's always a delicate balance. Could you flesh out going outside the box with pursuing beauty in your home and marriage, like not buying stuff from Pottery Barn? No, that's not, it wasn't the moral of the story. But I think what I'm saying is the expressions that we have in various places, architecture or music or art or home decor or whatever it is, those things always have a worldview attached. So learn how to think in those categories and how to figure it out and how to read it. And so there is a lot of really bad, detrimental, there are a lot of lies being told about what your home should be like and what's it for instance. So think about those questions, like what is your home for? Like, is it actually just a docking station where you just go home to watch Netflix, sleep, and then leave again? Or is the home, does it exist for something else? And if it exists for something else, then, okay, work that out in practical ways. What is it for, and how can I make that beautiful? There are just a lot of questions we could be asking, like, is the whole point of the home centered around the TV? And that's it, like, there's no dining room table, it's just a bunch of lazy boys around the TV. That actually is saying something, right? You're actually communicating something about what your family exists for and how you have communion with each other. You know what I mean? Like, we sit in a row of lazy boys and look at the TV, or is it structured differently? Like, there are a lot of little decisions like that actually do really communicate what this is about. And so I think I would just say it's not about like never buy things from, a non-Christian. It's not that. It's just like, how can you take bits and pieces from the world? We can't just create ex nihilo, we can't just say, I shall have everything untainted by any bad worldview at any time. I mean, we have to assemble these things and put them together, but we should be doing it thoughtfully and communicating something specific as we do it. And I am going to sit down and let Rachel answer her questions. I'm sorry I didn't get through all of them.
Okay, the first one, how do you encourage imagination and storytelling while avoiding mysticism or witchcraft in fantasies? How do you talk about fiction with kids as well as value truth? Our kids read a ton, so I know some Christians who are anti-mysticism or witchcraft would say you can't, Narnia is off limits, and we're just just in the middle of the We Love Narnia camp. We love it. We are happy with, there are times where there is Nate's books are like this, Lewis's books are like this, Tolkien is like this, where I'm all in favor of stories that include all kinds of darkness and some, there's the White Witch in Narnia, there's all this, lots of nasty stuff in the Lord of the Rings, and then there in Nate's books there's Hermione the witch and lots of things. But the stories are true. It's fundamentally telling truth about reality and God, and that is something like Tolkien would have said. He would get really into the idea of sort of finding his stories, that they were real in some other sense. And so I would say, so long as they reflect. Either we're all in on stories that we think are healthy for a Christian imagination. This is a story in another world that still is tethered to the reality that God created. Or we're not into just witchy literature. So it's not like I would buy the kids, I don't know, there's a lot of that now. Like I would not buy some series that's all about witchiness without knowing what we were getting into. But I would say we just encourage them. We talk about what they read. We talk about what it says about the world. Is it true? Is this, we want them to always be holding up things that they take in against God's word. One time we were going somewhere and we let our kids watch this was years ago now, but we let them watch a Disney or Pixar movie. I don't know which it was, but it was it was a newer movie, and we knew there was probably some weird stuff in it. And we were like, you can watch it while we're gone, but just make a list of the things that are not. We came home to multiple pages. I think there were some cousins there too, on a legal pad of all of the problems they had with this. They had a great time. They had a great time diagnosing the worldview troubles therein that they watched. So I would say just encouraging them to actually be weighing it against reality and saying, this is not true. This is a false story in that way, and not bothering to do that with things that are just pure nastiness. We don't get into all of it. This is an off-topic question, but it's one that I get a lot and I think probably matters to lots of you, so I'll answer it anyways. In showing hospitality, what advice or tips do you have for graciously dealing with unruly children while their parents are present? I don't want to offend, and I so want all to feel welcome, but sometimes the destruction of the home furnishings, etc., is unbelievable. This is a really real thing. It is, and it is especially a problem in Christian communities that value children, because there are people who like to just let their children take over and they don't intervene with it, and it's very awkward as the host family to be like, I know you see this. You can't say, do you see, because we're both looking at it. You're like, I see it, you see it. What are you going to do about it? This is the question. I would say there's a couple just basic tips. Number one, you never want to be having people in your home when you are not willing to let go of everything on their behalf. So at no time, if you have people in your home and you're thinking, that's really not good what they're doing to my couch, you want to know that you have the perspective that your couch matters less than the people who are in your home, that it does matter less. And that fundamentally it's God's, not yours, and that you are willing to give it. Now, this relates very closely to the fact that you're only qualified to comment on what's happening when you really would rather not. You would really rather not probably say, maybe you could rig your kids in a little bit. Maybe we could not do this. We do always have just house rules. Your kids are not allowed in bedrooms. We just shut doors so you can't be in here. That kind of thing is fine. But if it's easy to get your hostessing heart in a swizzle about stuff that isn't important. And I have a funny, I don't know how to describe this well. It's a funny relationship I have with the Lord on the particular topic of sticky beverages for children at my house. It's a long story. But the funny part about it is that I have come to know, it's fine if I just serve water to the kids, because if kids are going to run around with drinks or run around with things, I don't actually have time to clean every surface in your house afterwards. But I also know full well that every time I really care to control the sticky drinks, it's because I'm not being godly. And so it's this funny balance of me being like, I have no ethical problem with saying no sticky drinks for you to the kids. And I do that sometimes. But I also know that when my heart most wants to deny everyone access to a sticky drink is the time that I ought to be like, you know what we should do? We should do lemonade. We should do lemonade in cups you can't control. We should go hard on this point. And I have had lots of personal hilarity and refining over this, but I feel like it's almost like God is teasing me on this topic, because one time I thought, I'm gonna go ahead and text everyone, because I knew I wasn't having any kind of a problem with it. I was like, I'm open-handed, I'm fine. I'm gonna go ahead and text everyone, let's make sure we keep the drinks at the table so that we don't get the whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. But I was aware enough of it to know that I was in discussion with the Lord about, should I send that text? And me being like, yeah, I should. I will. It's fine. I'm fine. I'm godly about it. And then it was like the most surpassingly shocking incident we have ever had. And it was through no one's fault. It was nobody being bad at all. And it was an amazing combination of, we have the dining room and the kitchen, which is where everyone was sitting. Somebody, teenager, had a full can of pop all the way out in the front, and a little kid ran to their mom, who grabbed them and swung them and kicked the can out of the innocent bystander's hand, who was doing nothing wrong, kicked the can out of it. I mean, and it was like flipping through the air. It was probably 4 rooms. It was like the entryway, the living room, the other room, and like pillars in the hall, and and it was like the stickiest festival we've ever had. And I died laughing, because I was like, the Lord loves me, and he says, Rachel, let it go about the sticky drinks. Like, just let it go. Clean the walls off.